What is up, y'all? Back here with another episode of the Blitz Angle. This time, a live edition, sort of like we did last week. We had a really good turnout in our first live go at it here on the Blitz Angle, so I figured why not do it again after a whole Sunday slate. I am Brady Penn here with my boy, the brain behind Blitz Media, Ryan Linkletter. And Ryan, start us off. What did you think on our second Sunday slate of football games in the NFL season?
Let me just start with this. This week was crazy. We got our upsets, we had our blowouts that I don't think anybody was expecting with the Saints over the Cowboys. And, we had the Vikings taking down the 49ers. We mentioned on this show that that was going to be a good matchup just because of how the Vikings face the 49ers, but we saw them pull that out. We had a great game between the Bengals and the Chiefs that I know a lot of people predicting blowouts, but the Bengals always turn it up for the Chiefs. So we got a great matchup there and a great week 2 slate. Brady, which game you want to start off with?
One game that was kind of disappointing to me in terms of a guy that I'm looking to kind of climb the ladder this year is the Colts and their disappointing effort today against the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. Obviously, we talked all week about Malik Willis and how much he would limit the Packers offense, but a credit to Malik Willis. He wasn't the driving force on that Packers offense, but he did his job. He made the plays that he was supposed to. Matt LaFleur kind of kept it simple for him, but he was getting rid of the football. He was finding guys in space. He was converting on the big downs when he needed to, and he just did a good job of managing the game. But one thing that I said we were going to see this week that we did see was Josh Jacobs over 30 carries, and he was a big reason that the Packers were able to do what they did offensively, over 150 rushing yards, I believe, for Jacobs against that Colts defense. And Anthony Richardson, 3 interceptions. The third one came there right at the end of the ball game, but he was really inaccurate today, as opposed to he was inaccurate at times last week against Houston. We thought maybe he'd clean it up this week against the Packers defense that didn't fare well in week 1, and then he was actually worse this week in terms of accuracy as compared to last week. There weren't really a whole lot of big time throws open for Richardson deep down the field, and all in all, you got to be disappointed if you're the Colts. You're sitting at 0-2, and things aren't looking great for you to this point for a guy that you're hoping ascends here in year 2.
Yeah, no, Anthony Richardson definitely had a disappointing performance. I think he finished with 3 interceptions, and the accuracy problems were still there this week. And, we both went into that game assuming that, the Packers without Jordan Love, they'd take a step back and weren't able to, produce a similar output to what they did. Matt LaFleur, they talked about it. I know Greg Olsen mentioned it a bunch, how they went to basically a college scheme and, they dominated on the ground. Josh Jacobs had all those carries and, Malik Willis wasn't asked to do a lot, and that helped them win the game. It basically felt like the Colts on offense didn't do enough, and they kind of blew it on their end just because of how bad Anthony Richardson was. And from a development standpoint, it's very concerning. As a guy that's high on AR, he just has to figure it out from an accuracy standpoint, or else he's going to keep having these spike weeks and then these crazy bad weeks that we got this week where they lose to a Packers team they have no business losing to. Now the Colts find themselves at 0-2. I mean, I don't know what's next for the Colts at this point. I know that they have a lot of division games ahead of them. The Texans looked really good tonight. The Jags are obviously a mess. And then the Titans have a great defense. And the Titans, for example, that's a game if AR falls apart, the Titans could score 17 points and beat them. So with Anthony Richardson, I have a lot of concerns going forward. He's got to figure out that accuracy problem if he's going to make an impact like we think he's going to have this season.
100%. And now I want to swing over to the NFC South for a few games that we saw earlier today. The Falcons are in action tomorrow night against the Eagles, but the other 3 teams in the division, interesting games for each of them in their own right. The Panthers, the Bryce Young experiment just doesn't look like it's going well right now. No. Bryce Young had another really poor game. The offensive line was terrible, and it's just weird. It doesn't seem like Carolina really had a direction after the Bryce Young pick. Like, we've just seen them kind of try and throw things at the wall. I know they did pick Xavier Legette, and we haven't seen a ton from so far. I haven't seen a ton from anybody on the Panthers, but they are terrible. There's a good chance that they are in the worst record in the league spot once again
100%
into this season. And it'll be interesting to see how many games they can even pull off. Then you've got the Saints, who, as you mentioned, shockingly came out and just laid it on the Cowboys. And there are a couple takeaways I had here. I knew that last week the Cowboys had a really great defensive performance, but I wasn't sure how much of that was due to their execution and how much of it was due to a really bad game by Watson. And I'm not going to say that it was just all Watson last week or anything like that, but I did wonder how the Cowboys would fare against maybe a better offense, which, to be fair, coming into the season, I'm not sure we would have said that about the Saints in comparison to the Browns. But so far, they've put up 40 plus both weeks. I know last week is the Panthers. You don't want to take it as too much. And so you want to see it on a more legitimate opponent, which they did this week. 44 points for them. And I know Saints Nation was coming at you for your replacement of Derek Carr. And if he has a few more games like the last 2 weeks and Clint Kubiak has really unlocked this offense play calling wise, then it'll be tough to leave him where you've got him right now. Same goes for me.
Yeah, and for those of you guys wondering if this is live, yes, this is live right now. I don't know why you guys think this might be pre-recorded, but this is definitely live right now. We are at you right after the Bears-Texans game. We wouldn't want to do you guys any justice besides give you guys our live reactions to this crazy Sunday slate. And going off of kind of the NFC South, the Saints are surprising right now. You know, Kubiak's been a great addition to the offensive coordinator side of things. And Derek Carr is, found the deep ball again, and he looks healthy. He's been really efficient, and he's played very well. And we saw Alvin Kamara go for 4 touchdowns a day, 180 yards. He seems like he's never going to age. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they got after the Cowboys a little bit. The Cowboys struggled, and, both sides of the ball for the Saints are really clicking right now. And going forward, it's going to be a matter of this team continuing that output if they're going to wind up making noise in the NFC South or even in the playoffs this year. I'm not buying a Super Bowl run, but I might be buying a playoff run after this week. They look really good right now. And then going off of that, the Panthers, they're a dumpster fire. It's over. It's over. The Panthers, you guys, Bryce Young had 84 passing yards today. And we'll talk about this later when we get into the Chiefs game. I know I'm going to have a lot to say about that one, and you probably will too. But the NFL as a whole with these 2 shell safeties have just basically killed high passing outputs, it feels like, for passing yards. And it's going to come down to running backs. And the Carolina Panthers refuse to help Bryce Young in that department. They don't get stops on defense. And then Bryce Young, when he hits the pass, has no clue what he's doing. And that's the result. You get 84 passing yards. So I'm out on the Carolina Panthers. It's a 2 to 3 win season inbound. And if they don't fix things fast, Dave Canales could be a 1-year wonder at head coach. And Bryce Young, I know he said he has all of this season, but next year his clock's ticking from week 1.
100%. And then another NFC South team, the Buccaneers, they look like one of the contenders in the NFC right now. I mean, on a day that you saw the Niners and the Lions, presumptively the 2 NFC favorites by most people, both fell today. Obviously, the Lions to the Buccaneers. And to me, there were a couple of takeaways in this game. I think Baker played pretty solid. Baker, not quite as good as he was last week, but he did a decent job in this one. Not quite as big in the volume stats department. But Jared Goff, I've had my questions about him, and it's early in the season, but he had 4 or 5 passes that should have been intercepted today. He only had the 2 picks, but really cost the Lions. And as a whole, I think obviously it's still early and you can't overreact, but their offense has certainly looked noticeably less efficient than last season's in these first 2 games. Obviously, that overtime win against Los Angeles, they kind of had to grind that one out. And that win here in week 2 looks maybe a little bit less impressive after the Rams got absolutely demolished by the Arizona Cardinals this afternoon. And then today,
I do want to say one thing about the Lions. We were both on a regression for them. We knew these 1-score games like last year, every 1-score game they came out on top.
And it's not sustainable.
Yeah, we saw it again last week against the Rams. They found a way to win a 1-score game where it was ugly. This week they had I'm writing my article on this right now. They had 400-something yards. The Bucs had 200, right? But the 2 turnovers is what cost the Lions. Yep. And it's going to come down to Jared Goff. It always will come down to Jared Goff and that offense. And if Jared Goff, lets people down and, doesn't play like a good game manager like he is, and I don't think game manager is necessarily a bad term as a quarterback, right? Jared Goff's very good in his role. He's just not a very talented quarterback in general. But what he has done, in the Lions system is, if he's efficient and things work well, that offense is going to be really good. But if they turn the ball over and give the Bucs so many chances like they had tonight, the Bucs are going to come out with a game. But like you guys are mentioning in the chat, we are taking questions. So drop your guys' questions below. We're just going to go week by week, game by game, go through those reviews. And when you guys have questions, we'll answer them too. But going off of that, the NFC North, I do want to talk about the Vikings and 49ers for sure. We saw on the 49ers side of the ball, Brock Purdy had 300 passing yards. Jordan Mason had 100 rushing yards, but still not able to get the job done. Turnovers, not executing, settling with field goals just didn't work out for the 49ers today. And we saw on the Vikings side of the ball, that defense really stepped up and actually might be a little bit better than we thought. And then Kevin O'Connell's a top 10 coach for sure, maybe top 5. Him and Matt LaFleur really are moving up that list after their performances today. Those two guys really know how to scheme up anybody with any quarterback at the helm. And especially with Matt LaFleur, we saw him completely change his scheme this week from last week. So kudos to those guys. The Vikings look good today. What was your analysis on that game?
I'm going to be honest. This is one of the games that I didn't get to see very much of. Obviously, on a Sunday 1 o'clock window where there's 8 games going on, you kind of have to maybe label or narrow it down to a few that you really want to pay attention to. And I kept getting glimpses on the Red Zone channel of just the Vikings continuing to be efficient on offense. And I mean, that touchdown to Justin Jefferson, let me just say, Tyreek Hill is amazing. I think Justin Jefferson just continues to make it clear. I know we talked about how this could be a debate earlier in the offseason, but Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the National Football League. And
100%.
Sam Darnold is no scrub, but he's not some top 10 quarterback or elite quarterback. And Justin Jefferson just goes out there. He doesn't complain. He still does his thing. He still gets his numbers and causes, obviously, an insane offensive impact. So shout out to Jay Jettas. He's shown us multiple times last year, this year. He can get it done with anybody under center. And I think that's another part of what makes him so great is just how adapting he is out there at wide receiver. And it's truly a treat to watch him. And he's a big reason why the Vikings are sitting at that 2-0 record that I don't think any of us saw coming.
Yeah. Another thing I want to mention real quick, I'll get into MAGA Man's question about the Texans, but Josh Naylor really stepped up today with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison out. He's really stepped up at the end of the game and helped them win that game, getting open and finding a way to move the sticks when the Vikings had that lead. And, if he establishes himself as a clear wide receiver 3 in that offense, that's a huge win for the Vikings and gives them another weapon to use on that offense. And we saw Ty Chandler step up today at 10 carries, 82 yards, and that's another weapon. The Vikings keep compiling these weapons they build into next year. I know this year they look good right now. Sam Darnold's playing well, but if they build into next year around J.J. McCarthy, that's going to ascend his development with all these weapons around him. All right, let's get into the Texans. Now, this game felt like it was more lopsided than the final score was. It really did. And what I want to mention about this is the Bears defense is going to be really, really good this year. And it looks like that the Texans defense has improved from last year as well. But the Texans offense, man, those weapons are scary. It really is. They have 4 elite wide receivers in my mind. They have Joe Mixon, who's established a running game in Houston. We saw Cam Akers come in, fill in just fine for him. They have a different dimension on that unit. They played really well against a very good Bears defense tonight. And on the Bears side of the ball, we saw, Caleb Williams is just making rookie mistakes right now. It really feels like he looked better than he did last week. Shane Waldron, we had a challenge for Shane Waldron to step up and give Caleb Williams an easier game script to get him going. And, it looked like that to start the game. Williams did look a lot better to start this one. He got going early. It just I don't know if it's him holding onto the ball too long or the offensive line completely breaking down right away, but the combination of that and then him, it seems like when he's throwing on the run right now, his ball has no velocity. It's just going and dying to his receivers. We saw DJ Moore, Chris Collinsworth kept mentioning this on the broadcast. I don't want to glaze him because he's my boss, but Chris Collinsworth kept mentioning on deep out routes to DJ Moore that if Caleb Williams just lofted on the outside more, that he'd actually have a chance to the ball, and he was underthrowing DJ Moore on a few of those, and we saw DJ Moore get very frustrated at the end. I think there's just growing pains with Williams. His arm strength just wasn't the question coming in, and we saw some of the concerns with that tonight, but I'm not really concerned long-term. It just looks like he has a lot on his plate right now. He's trying to beat a very good Texans team who's honestly going to be ranked second in my power rankings this week with poor blocking. You're missing Keenan Allen, probably the most veteran wide receiver and third down threat they have in that room. And tonight we just saw him not able to do it. But coming off of last week, I think it's an improvement. So, you have to look at it in that case. We didn't expect the Bears to go beat the Texans tonight, but we want to see Caleb Williams improve, and we did see him improve. Brady, what do you think?
I do think that he improved. I will say that the bar was really low as compared to last week's performance, but I do think he did better. I think the one thing that I've been disappointed in that he was a lot better with, in my opinion, in college is the way he's dealt with pressure so far in his face. Caleb Williams has just looked really rattled and flustered. And obviously in college, we saw that great play extension, sort of like a Mahomes has, or even a Josh Allen has, where he can just, when the pocket collapses, he's able to run around, buy some time for his receivers, and then get ahead of the defenders and find those open guys. And we really haven't seen that so far. I don't know if it's just the NFL defenders being faster and quicker and knowing what kind of style he likes to play. I don't know if he's pressing. I don't know if he's double thinking or overthinking and second guessing too often. But Caleb Williams, just these first two games, has not looked good at all. And like you said, it's not time to be concerned long term. It's been two games against two good defenses by all accounts so far. But I will say, especially on that deep ball that you referred to, things have been concerning for Caleb Williams. And then on the other side, the Houston Texans, they feel really dangerous, not just because of the weapons, but because they've played two games where it doesn't really feel like they've been extremely sharp offensively. And it feels like they've definitely got a lot of room for improvement on the offensive side of the ball. And yet they're still 2-0. Their offense has shown some really good things. And Nico Collins is establishing himself once again, like last season, as a true alpha number one wide receiver.
I will say this. We told you guys this 3 weeks ago. From the wide receiver snap shares we saw in the preseason, we knew Nico Collins was going to be the clear-cut wide receiver one. So make sure you guys take that, remember it in the back of your head, and say, oh, Blitz Sports Media knows a little bit about ball, because we called that one weeks ago, and we knew Nico Collins was going to take over that room.
Exactly. And we didn't see much from Joe Mixon tonight. Like I predicted, it was a little bit more passing attack than last week was for the Texans offense. We saw CJ continue to try and get Diggs involved, especially in the first half, had a couple great throws to him, and then not the best night for Tank Dell. Dell had some mistakes, a couple of drops, did not play his best game. And so far through the first two games, it kind of seems like between him and Diggs, he might be the one that gets phased out just a little bit more. Diggs has been pretty productive so far, and I think he's just getting his feet wet in that offense. Obviously, Dell's recovering from a torn ACL as well, so we might see Tank back to last year's Tank Dell in week 6 or 7. It could happen next week, but it still might take a little bit extra time because of that injury he's coming off of. But I think CJ Stroud, especially considering how poor a lot of quarterback play has been, I think like this dude is crawling in, if he's not there already, on that top 5 status. It just seems like CJ Stroud, if you're a Texans fan, you're probably more confident than most fan bases are in their quarterbacks right now. I mean, obviously before the season, guys you have above him, Mahomes, Allen, probably Herbert, Lamar, Burrow. But I mean, look at Burrow and Lamar right now. They're both 0-2 while CJ sits at 2-0. Lamar Jackson, we could talk about this in a moment, but a disappointing win for him and his, or disappointing loss rather, for him and his team in the home opener today. Joe Burrow, we expected to lose, but some promising things from the Cincy offense as compared to last week. But I mean, CJ Stroud, like I'm saying, I think he's closing in on that like really good to elite quarterback territory, and it just feels like he's so much more composed than the other quarterbacks his age and at his experience level. It feels like he's just super poised and super calm at all times. And one thing that is refreshing to see with all the guys that love to run around and extend plays and everything, which there is a place for in the game of football, it's added a unique element. It is good to see a guy that just likes to stand in the pocket and operate from within there. CJ Stroud, he's got mobility. He's not a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning in terms of his legs or anything, but the guy likes to sit back there, let it rip, trust his O-line, and let his pass catchers make plays. So it's nice to see, in my opinion.
I know you love your pocket passers. All right. Yeah. Let's get to some questions that you guys have before we get into the other games of the week. Drop your questions below, and we will start answering them. The first question, we'll start with the stupid question. Thoughts on eliminating penalties in the NFL as a whole? Now, personally, I'll pass, because my team needs to get bailed out by penalties to be a good team and win Super Bowls. So I guess we'll need them going forward. If we're going to abolish the penalty, I guess the one penalty that I will get rid of, hands to the face and blocking. You know why? It's just such like you're just trying to block somebody, you know? Hands of the face and blocking have never been behind, and sometimes it just happens, especially like defensive hands of the face. You're just trying to fight hands at that point, and sometimes you're just going to get hands of the face, and then it gets called. It's just a stupid penalty.
I hear you. I'm gonna go with keeping the penalties as well, but I am down for one like caveat, and it's like if it's a team that I don't want to win, I'm fine with the penalties being enforced. If it's a team that I want to win, then eliminate the penalties on them. We'll go with that. And the Chiefs are never allowed to have a positive penalty margin.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but it helps them win the Super Bowl. That's all they need.
I'm not gonna go that far, but hey, you do see those flags late in a lot of KC games.
I don't know.
It was a good call though. I'm on record. It was the correct call.
We will get into it in a second. I know we will. All right. Not many other questions right now, so we'll rip Raiders and Ravens real quick. I want to mention this. The Raiders have no ground game whatsoever. 1.6 yards per carry today. That's horrible. Zamir White fantasy owners, it's officially time to freak out. Those guys are not looking good for Las Vegas. And what was promising, though, was tight end Brock Bowers. He went off today. He's going to be a dog for them. Him and Devontae is a scary duo, and if they get a quarterback that's pretty good, that Las Vegas offense could really go off.
Myers too.
Jacoby Myers is a nice piece in there. He's not on their level, but he's a nice piece. He's
one of those like solid twos, like not a great two, not a Higgins or Devontae or anything, but he's a solid two.
Yeah, he's a solid piece. But that defense really stepped up today against the Ravens, the Ravens just looked like they were out of sorts. They didn't want to be there today. It felt like they were coming off a hangover from their Chiefs all-out effort game to where it was a do-or-die game, and it went the wrong way for them, and they left a lot of energy on that field. They came into this week a little bit dead. It didn't get going until the second half, and then that defense just kind of fell apart. And I know you're going to talk more about Mike McDonald's absence on the defensive side of the ball and how that can impact them going forward.
Well, definitely. I think it kind of ties into what you're talking about in terms of defensive coordinators, which I'll mention. But it feels like on both sides of the football, the Ravens don't have an identity right now. They're not sure what they want to do. I know last year was probably one of their more balanced years in terms of passing and rushing ratio. They still ran the ball as the best team in the league rushing-wise, but their passing game started to ascend a bit more last season, I felt like. But this year, it feels like they want to get Lamar more involved than ever passing the ball, but they also want to run the ball. But it's weird the way that they work the running backs, and Henry still hasn't gotten really a big workload in either of the first two games. And it just feels like the Ravens might be trying to do too many things, especially on defense. I mean, they had a clear identity on the defensive side last year. Mike McDonald, who you mentioned, kind of was the leader of that as that DC, drawing up exotic looks. And obviously you lost Patrick Queen and Geno Stone as well, who were contributors. But this Ravens defense just looks a lot more vulnerable and soft than last season so far. And like you mentioned, Mike McDonald, he's gone. He's over in Seattle. All of a sudden, their defense has given up 20 points a game through the first 2 weeks, albeit against probably two bottom third offenses. Meanwhile, the Ravens have given up, I believe, 27 and 28 in their first two games or something like that. And obviously, Zach Orr only in his second game as a DC here today, but got to get that turned up really quickly now if you're the Ravens sitting at 0-2, because you look at their schedule, they're 0-2. They have the Cowboys next weekend at 4:25. Both teams coming off of a loss. Both teams coming off really disappointing losses. It's in Jerry World, so not an easy win by any means for the Ravens, although they should be favored, I think. And then you've got Bills and Ravens, and there's a chance that the Bills are 3-0 coming into that Ravens game, and that'll be a tough one for Baltimore as well. They'll be back at the bank. That is a Sunday night game in Week 4. And then after that, they've got the Bengals, who will likely be coming off back-to-back wins as they face the Commanders and the Panthers. You know, if you're a Cincy fan, go ahead and knock on wood while I say that. But, I mean, this is a tough go of it for the Ravens to be 0-2 and have these three opponents lined up. And, again, through the offense and the defense on Baltimore, you got to figure out who you are quickly and start playing to your strengths a little bit better.
What's so frustrating, I know we'll keep going on games and games, but what's frustrating about the AFC North in general, right? The Steelers are 2-0. They're not very good.
No,
Justin
especially
Fields,
not offensively.
yeah, they're just not very good. I know defensively they're great, but offensively they're not very good. The Browns, great defensively, not very good offensively. The Ravens, good both offensively and defensively. And then the Bengals, very good offensively, above average defensively, great defensive coordinator. We'll talk about that later too. But what's confusing about this division right now is the top two teams in that division are 0-2. The Steelers are 2-0, and the Browns are 1-1, right? And it's probably going to be flipped around by the end of the season to where the Steelers finish third, Browns finish fourth, or Browns finish third, Steelers finish fourth, because the Bengals and the Ravens, when they're at their best, and we've seen them at their best in week 1 and week 2 when they both played the Chiefs, when they have to get up for a game, they're ready to go. But when they play a team that they necessarily do not want to play, I guess like the Raiders and the Patriots, where they're just like, okay, we're more talented and we're just going to roll over this team, they're not necessarily ready to go. And that's concerning from a weekly output, but both those teams just know when to get up for the right games. And I think they'll be okay going forward. So I don't think it's time to freak out about the Ravens. I do think they'll turn it on against some better teams going forward, but definitely a concern to start on too. All right, let's get back to some questions here. Has any of our preseason picks changed? I'll start with this one. I'll go with one that I'm more down on and then one team that I should have had better. The first team, I'll just make it very clear. New Orleans Saints. I had them finishing third in the division, maybe at like 5-12. And I think the Vikings too. Those are my two teams that I should have picked to, win more games. I had both of them at 5-7 wins. And honestly, like I just saw regression with an older Saints team. And I was wrong. I didn't think the new offense coordinator Kubiak could fix Derek Carr. Derek Carr looked like a mess the last 2 years, and here we are. They're 2-0. They just blew out the Cowboys. They're definitely a sneaky team to win the South and a playoff team, going forward, which is definitely not what I saw. The team that I'm more down on is the Rams. The Rams have a lot of injuries and got blown out by the Cardinals today. I had them all the way in the NFC Championship. They're just a different team with all these injuries. It's just not the same Rams that we got in week 1, even the first quarter. So a different Rams team going forward is definitely going to hurt them. And now they're 0-2 in a tough division. So they got a lot of work to do to kind of even make the playoffs. What about you?
Yeah, I had the Rams as a 13-4, 12-5 level team. They've obviously already got 2 losses, but I'm going to go same as you, at least in the teams that are surprising me, and that's the Vikings and the Saints. I had both these as last place teams, had them both getting top 5 picks in the NFL draft, and I was with you. I thought it was really the end of the line for Derek Carr, and didn't really find a whole lot about their roster great, but I mean, they're 2-0. The Vikings are 2-0, and I think we saw the NFC North compared to what we've seen so far. I think we expected the North as a whole to be stronger than it has been. Obviously, the Bears have had major struggles offensively. The Lions were slow on offense today, and then the Packers, we're not really sure yet. Haven't really gotten to evaluate 2 whole games with the starting quarterback, but it's weird they get the win with their backup. So not quite sure what they will be. The prediction that I was high on, what was it that we were too low on and then we were too high on?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'd probably have to go with the Ravens for who I've been too high on. I expected them to be a 13-14 win team this season, and no doubt I feel like their floor is still probably 11 wins.
Yeah, but, I mean, Fast Eddie here has them at 2-3 after 5, which is interesting.
Interesting. I mean, there's a very real scenario where that does happen. They've got a tough go of it coming up, but yeah, I think that the Ravens would be who I'd have to go on. And then if the Falcons lose tomorrow night, I had them winning the South and being an 11-12 win team, and they'll be 0-2 to start the year with Tampa and New Orleans both sitting at 2-0. So I think that those are the two that I'd go on for being too high on so far, because I also don't expect the Falcons to get that win tomorrow night.
Yeah, I mean, it's early. It's 2 weeks in. There's still 15 games left to play. We got a lot of football. I think more concerningly, if your team's 0-2, is how healthy your team is. If you had high expectations for your team and you have injuries and they're 0-2, then that's kind of a concern like the Rams, right? If you're 0-2 and you're like the Bengals and the Ravens, and you have most of your team, I know T. Higgins was out, but they have most of their team. I think they're going to turn it around. They have playoff experience. I think they'll be in the race for sure and get in eventually at some point and kind of start playing good ball at the right time. A lot of teams start 2-0 and fall off too. Like, the Seahawks are 2-0 right now. Don't tell Seahawks Depot on our Blitz Sports media staff that we don't think the Seahawks are very good, but they're not very good. And they're not going to be great going forward. They just started hot. All right, we're going to get to another question right here. Brady, go-to game day meal from Jets fan.
You said what?
Go-to game day meal as a fan and a player.
Honestly, I think Chick-fil-A is always my go-to. Being here in the South, there are plenty of football games when I was playing that I like to eat Chick-fil-A before the game, especially in high school. And I always get happy now as a member of the staff over with Georgia Tech football, and both when I was playing, there's a lot of times that there's Chick-fil-A in the post-game meals, especially at Georgia Tech. We were getting, and even there's a Chick-fil-A all the time. We went on a pregame flight, or before we played Syracuse last week, getting on a flight to Syracuse, just boxes of Chick-fil-A lined up, and I was like, this is it. This is the spot right here. So I'm going with that God's chicken.
God's chicken. We used to give Raisin Canes all the time, and I hate Raisin
Canes is valid though.
It's just so bad when it's soggy and sitting there catered.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, miss me with that. All right, Bad Boy CC. I know you two have a lot of good banter on Twitter. All right, what do you think of Dak post bag?
Not ideal. I mean, I feel like he actually didn't start this game bad today. Things once the Saints got up like 21-10 or whatever it was at some point mid to late second quarter is when Dak started playing bad. Saw a couple of turnovers, and he really wasn't great last week. If you go back and watch that tape against the Browns, so Dak Prescott definitely not getting it done these first few games post contract. And it's funny. I mean, you see for some reason after these dudes sign these big contracts, the play just like immediately starts to go out the window. It's not necessarily fair to say it's only 2 game sample size like you said, but let's have some fun with it here. Trevor Lawrence 0-2, sub 20 points in both his first 2 games post contract. Jordan Love, horrible game where he gets injured. Tua 0-2, 2 bad games, was playing horrible, got injured, and then Dak, who has played poorly in his 2 games post contract. So it'll be something to keep an eye on these dudes, especially if Tua and Love come back sooner rather than later. See what goes on with these 4 guys this season.
Yeah, I mean, in the NFC, I know we get to see Jalen Hurts tomorrow, but the top quarterbacks in the NFC have not been impressive so far to start the year. I know Matthew Stafford had a good week 1.
Baker is the best one to me.
He hasn't followed with a good week 2. I mean, it was subpar today against a pretty poor Cardinals defense that we expected them to shred. I know he doesn't have Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp got hurt, but, I mean, he could have done a little bit better than he did today. And then, wait, what were you going to say?
No, I said I agree.
Yeah, and then you got Dak. Dak struggled. I think against the Browns, he got a little bit too much credit for that win. Mm-hmm. It was more the defense just kind of balling out, Deshaun Watson kind of being horrible for him getting that W. But and then you got Jalen Hurts is the most fascinating option to me. He's going to put up massive numbers this year because of Kellen Moore, and he might throw 20 interceptions. I mean, he might throw 20. But he might have 4,500 yards and 35 touchdowns, and it might be actually passing touchdowns, not tush-push touchdowns.
Right.
That he's getting there because they're going to have to throw the ball a ton. You have a ton of talented weapons, and they're going to move the ball a lot, and that's why I think Jalen Hurts, his ceiling just could be so high after the season. If he can actually develop as a passer, it could just be really special for Philly to have that extra dimension that it feels like they've been I don't want to say lacking, but just not consistent in the last 2 seasons under Nick Sirianni and then previously Shane Steichen.
100%.
All right, let's get back into another game preview. All right, let's go Chiefs-Bengals now. Okay. Obviously, the Chiefs won on that last-second field goal by Butker, who is, I think, officially the best kicker in the NFL now. I know Brandon Aubrey's.
I was going to say him or Aubrey.
Yeah, Justin Tucker is no longer has the reign as the top kicker in the NFL. He can't even hit a 50-yarder anymore.
He's like 1 for his last 9 from 50 plus.
Yep, he has not been as good. But going off of that, I want to say that the MVP, it's not always Joe Burrow. I know Joe Burrow was 3-1 heading into this one against Patrick Mahomes. The reason why the Chiefs always struggle against the Bengals is Lou Anarumo. He is the Bengals MVP. Every time they play the Chiefs, they run the 2 shell safeties and they either rush 3 or they change it to a 4 and they play cover 2 basically the whole game. And what that does is Andy Reid doesn't know how to call plays anymore. Patrick Mahomes forgets how to be Patrick Mahomes, and the whole offense basically unravels. We saw when the Chiefs aren't patient what kind of happens against the Bengals, and that was a full-on display today. It looked like almost the second half of the AFC Championship game at times today. And Patrick Mahomes, I saw this stat on Sunday Night Football, least amount of passing yards in a game that he finished healthy in his career today. And what was interesting about the game is that they had to lean on Pacheco, and they didn't lean on him enough. I know they had more carries. I think it was around 30 to 25 in terms of carries to pass attempts where the carries were leading, but they didn't lean on Pacheco enough. And now Pacheco's hurt, which is a whole nother thing that we're going to have to get into. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they couldn't stop a nosebleed. They were tough in the red zone, I will say that, but the Bengals had their way with them majority of the game. The Bengals played A-plus football. The Chiefs got D-plus, C-minus football. And the Chiefs somehow found a way to win the game on a late call. And now that's the only thing that's going to be talked about in this game instead of Lou Anarumo being a great defensive coordinator and the Chiefs just finding a way to win a close game.
Well, I think this definitely was a display of Spags against Lou Anarumo. I think both DCs were really dialing it up, especially on crucial plays. And on the Bengals defense, they were so effective because Trey Hendrickson was just dominating off the edge.
The Chiefs have a problem at left tackle.
Yeah, but at left tackle, he was taking advantage of both guys coming in there. The new rookie, I forget how to pronounce the name, but
Kingsley Sumatia, something like that.
Yeah, he got taken out at times. Wanya Morris was in there, and Trey Hendrickson was just getting everything that he wanted. And if it wasn't for Aiden Hutchinson, he might have had the best pass rush performance that I saw today. So he was making Mahomes uncomfortable. And then you talked about Pacheco and the Chiefs not riding and relying on him enough. But I think that they didn't find Rashee Rice enough. Rice was getting open in this game. Mahomes found him, obviously, for that great throw down the sideline for the touchdown. But there really wasn't a whole lot of Rashee Rice in this one. And even more concerning, probably – aside from left tackle, the biggest concern for the Chiefs offense is that Travis Kelce only has 4 catches through the first 2 games and has been held pretty quiet through these first couple of games. And obviously, for anybody that, thinks Travis Kelce has lost it or whatever, I don't think that's the case. We saw him have a slow start to last season. We saw him towards the end of the year only being around that 800-yard range. And then when it came to the playoffs, he turned it on. So I definitely wouldn't write off Travis Kelce, but as he's sitting at 34, 35, whatever he is, and then starting to get these off-season deals and getting in this major celebrity relationship that everybody knows about, it'll be interesting to see how long and how peaked the performance is for Kelce the remainder of his career.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to mention with Kelce, it just feels like I know that we talk about Andy Reid and his play calling and how great it is. The first 2 weeks, it hasn't been great. I haven't been a big fan of his play calling the first 2 weeks, and especially against the Bengals. It seems like he can never dial up the right play against Lou Anarumo. And it just, I don't know what it is. He is stubborn, it seems like almost at times. And if he has a scheme that he wants to work for the season, he's going to stick with it for a few weeks before they get beat up. And we saw that obviously Travis Kelce's not involved early. We see Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy are getting their touches to get going. We haven't seen any of Juju Smith-Schuster yet. I know you think he's washed, but he's going to have a place in that offense eventually just because Marquise Brown's out for the year, basically. They don't have Marquise Brown, so they're not going to be able to do what they wanted to do in the
Give me Sky.
What do you say?
I said, give me Sky Moore.
No, I'm good. I'll pass. Justin Watson's going to have to step up, but they're not going to be able to run that offense they had in the offseason with 2 deep threats, 2 guys over the middle, and then Pacheco at running back. Pacheco's going to be out. Marquise Brown's out for the year. And now you're stuck with Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, and Travis Kelce. So Travis Kelce needs to get going. They have to find a way to get him going. And on the Bengals side of the ball, why is Chase Brown not playing more snaps? Chase Brown, every time he touches the ball, gets 6 to 7 yards a touch. Zach Moss actually goes nowhere. It's so annoying. Like, that guy needs to increase his snap amount, and that's kind of what they're missing with Joe Mixon being gone in Houston, is a consistent guy on the ground that's going to keep eating away those yards. If not, then the pass rushers are going to be able to get home a lot easier against just a pass-heavy scheme.
I will say, there were times, especially on big third downs, where Burrow was under pressure. But considering the other times that we've seen the Bengals and Chiefs play, I actually thought the Bengals did a better job on the offensive line than I thought they were going to. I remember we talked the other day. I thought that Chris Jones would literally be in there at will every single play after his performance last week. And again, don't get me wrong, Burrow had some heat on him at times during the game, but I'll say that I thought the Bengals did a pretty good job in that regard. And I will say for the Bengals as well, one of the best, backing up trash talk moments in a while. I know the Bengals got the loss, but you saw Cam Taylor-Britt
That pick was crazy.
Making headlines talking about Xavier Worthy. He can just run straight really fast. Like, that's it. And while I don't think that's necessarily the all-encompassing truth about Xavier Worthy, for him to be guarding Worthy and then go up and one-hand intercept Mahomes, I mean, that's as much of backing it up as it gets, I guess.
Yeah, that pick was crazy. Fast Eddie says that KC is an inch away from likely shoe being in and a score away from potentially being 0-2, but full credit is due. They find a way. And
those are a great team.
They do. They find a way. If you guys have ever seen the Kansas City Chiefs fan meter, you guys would understand this a little bit more. For those of you guys that don't know, I'm actually a Chiefs fan. No, I'm not a bandwagon. I lived in Kansas for 8 years, and I survived Matt Castle and Romeo Crennel, so don't give me crap. All right. It is basically, I'm excited to watch this game. Oh, this game sucks. Everything's going wrong. And at the end of the game, we won.
We won.
Yeah, it's basically how a Chiefs game goes. They're going to play C-plus football. Every team's going to be ready to go because they're playing the Chiefs, and it's just going to look ugly for 3.5 quarters. The Chiefs will get the ball at the end. They'll find a way to win, and that's just kind of how it goes. I don't know when we're going to see a put-together Chiefs game. I mean, I think they probably played C-plus, B- football to start the year. I don't know when we're going to see that. I know they have the Falcons next week, and they could get some things going, but that just seems like a trap game at this point with the injuries starting to pile up and, coming off 2 tough games against opponents they played in the playoffs and have many rivalries against.
Definitely. And one thing that I wanted to take a look at real quick was what NFL teams that sit at 0-2 do we think have the best chance to bounce back and get into the playoffs? Taking a look here at the 0-2 teams, there's Denver, Baltimore, Cincy, Indy, Carolina, Giants, Jaguars, Titans, Rams. And I'll go first. If I had to pick 2 teams that I think can bounce back from this 0-2 start, obviously you got to go with Baltimore for one of them. I know they have these tough 3 games coming up, but at the end of the day, it's Lamar Jackson. You've still got Kyle Hamilton, Roquan Smith, Matabike on the defense. John Harbaugh has shown that he knows how to win. You've still got Zay Flowers and likely on the come up. Derrick Henry, still expect him to play a pretty large role in that offense. So I'm going to go with the Ravens for that first one. And then if I had to pick another 0-2 team to turn it around, about a week or 2 ago, I probably would have told you the Rams, but I'm going to go with the Bengals. I know today was a tough loss for them, but they played a lot better than I expected them to, and I think they played better than you expected them to as well. On the defense, I wasn't sure what we were going to see. I kind of thought the Chiefs might put up a lot of points. Bengals defense did play well last week, but that was just against the Patriots offense. Chiefs seem to have a juggernaut offense. Even without Hollywood Brown, they seem like they should be able to put up points at will most drives, and the Bengals really stopped them from doing that. The Bengals held them to like 1 for 8 on third down in this ball game or something crazy like that. So the Bengals defense stepped up. They competed against Kansas City, and I know they're 0-2, but they have 2 games that they should definitely win these next 2 weeks coming up to try and regroup and get back on the 500 track and move from there.
Yeah, and I don't want to be the type of guy that just agrees with you, but those are the easy picks, I feel like. I feel like Baltimore and Cincinnati are the 2 teams that are easily going to go from 0-2 and make the playoffs. Teams that I think might be controversial, that I think have no chance now that they're 0-2, Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville has been so bad their last 10 games, and it's time we have to start questioning this. Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence.
Hey, that's the preseason pick I feel the best about right now.
That is the pick you should feel the best about. Now, you can't get rid of Trevor Lawrence. You just paid him. He's the second highest paid quarterback in football right now. Okay. Doug Peterson, your seat's very, very warm.
It
These
is.
these collapses, these low scoring games, it's not looking good. It's kind of looking like the end of his Philly tenure where he had that great year, things were riding high, and then all of a sudden it just started trending down. So I think with Doug Peterson another season, and I think they might finish like 5-12, 6-11, somewhere right around there. They do not look good right now. And
No,
I know they faced two playoff teams from last year in the Dolphins and the Browns, but their offense looks like they have a ton of problems. Trevor Lawrence can't throw for over 175 yards in a game right now. And it's not going to be Trevor Lawrence that goes. It's going to be Doug Peterson that goes.
100%. They're going to do everything they can to make sure that Trevor succeeds. And that's the thing is, where do you go? Do you go on the offensive line this offseason if it's a lost year? Because you've already invested into wide receiving playmakers. You signed Gabe to a big deal. You got Brian Thomas. You signed Christian Kirk to a big deal. And on top of that, you also had Calvin Ridley there, who you thought could maybe stay at that star receiver level. He's gone now too. So it's not like the Jaguars haven't gone in on trying to get playmaking pieces for Trevor Lawrence. Maybe you look at that O-line. The defense really hasn't been terrible the first 2 weeks. It's just it's right now it seems like offensive line and head coach are the two areas that are most likely to get revamped for the Jaguars.
Yeah, and before we get into our next topic, drop your guys' questions below. We'll answer them before we wrap up this show right at the end. The next game I do want to kind of talk about a little bit is the Steelers and Broncos, right? And kind of going off of that, the rookie quarterbacks. Now, Bo Nix didn't play necessarily great today. He made a little bit of progress going forward. The Steelers' defense is just very good and got after him. We saw the Steelers' game plan, kick a bunch of field goals, win an ugly 13-7 game. And I think with the Steelers going forward, I don't think this changes their quarterback debate between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. It doesn't. Justin Fields has not been that good. He's done what they have asked of him, and he's been very game manager-y about it, the way he's gone about it. You know, he's done what he's needed to, but it's nothing special that's going to get them over the top. I think they're going to see what they have in Russell Wilson, see if they can get them another level. But with Fields, it seems like they're at this capped level of we have to control the ball for 8 minutes each drive, and we have to play excellent defense if we're going to win a game. But what did you think of Bo Nix's second performance?
Well, one, if there's any NFL fandom or subgroup of fans that's going to be really annoying after the first 2 weeks, it's the Justin Fields fan club, because you know that with the 2-0 record, they're going to be hyping that up. They're going to be like, oh my God, he's 2-0. He's finally with a winning team, before it all comes inevitably crashing down. And obviously, as we talked about, Caleb Williams has had the bad start. All I've seen all offseason from the Fields agenda is Caleb Williams is going to be just as bad in Fields in Chicago. They're going to let him fail the same way. He sucks. Fields can do everything he can. Now they're going to feel all vindicated in that. So that'll be interesting to see on the internet over these next few days, weeks, whatever. But in terms of Bo Nix, I'll admit, again, this isn't one of the games that I really was super locked into, but I was peeking throughout the game, and I think that the mistake that Nix made that was really killer was that red zone interception. Yeah. I think it might have been 10-0 at that point, and then you get in this red zone, which has been rare for you really the entire season so far, and you throw it straight to a defender. And Bo Nix has had a really tough time keeping the ball out of harm's way so far. I believe, 4 interceptions for him in his first 2 games. And I know just watching the tape from the Seahawks game last week, he had at least 2 more that should have been intercepted in that one as well. So definitely being fooled by some of these coverages. And again, this is why I say do not put too much stock into the preseason, because after preseason week 1, after he got named the starters, oh my God, the Broncos have found their franchise QB. They found their guy for the future. And, well, he might be, but these first 2 games, he looks awful. So
yeah. No, Jaden Daniels got his first win today.
7 field goal drives.
7 field goal drives. Nothing too shabby. I agree with you. They need to start pushing it down the field. It's too dinky-dunky drop-down passes right now, and it's not really exposing him into harm's way yet. And I don't know if they don't trust him yet or what, but they definitely trust him as a runner. I mean, the Commanders' offense does look, I don't want to say explosive, but interesting, I think is a better word.
I think that'd be a good word.
They're frisky. Their
Yeah,
offense is a little frisky. You know, the Brian Robinson and Jaden Daniels rushing duo with Austin Eckler, that actually might be a top 5 rushing unit in football. They've looked really good through 2 weeks, and the Giants' rush defense is no joke. But as a passer, it's nice to see Jaden Daniels completing the passes that they are asking him to complete. But when is he going to take that next step and make those harder throws that are just not within 10 yards? But I mean, he got a win today. He played average, and you know he's fun to watch. He's fun to watch. Caleb, we talked about him earlier, growing pains, and then Bo. I think Bo's obviously looked the worst out of the 3 at this point. He's just been erratic, and he's been asked to do more than those 2. I think from the amount of volume he gets in the game and his age coming in, and I think Sean Payton's just trusted him to go in there and be good. So I think right now I'd go my rookie rankings: Daniels, Williams, and then Nix.
I think that I'd agree with that, and I think that I'd also say that we're yet to see a good game from any of the 3 of them through the first 2 weeks, and it does make me kind of, I guess the word would be maybe relieved that seeing the way that these rookie quarterbacks have started, whenever, whether it's week 8 this week or next season, whenever Drake May gets thrown in there for New England, there won't be too high of a standard in terms of the other rookie quarterbacks where if he has a slow start or a slow first game or 2, you can't point and say, oh, well, all the other guys in this class were amazing off the bat. Like something's wrong. It definitely, I think that's a real thing. And when these rookies get compared to each other, and it takes some pressure off of New England and off of May himself.
For sure, 100%. But hey, it was an electric week 2. We'll be live with you guys tomorrow again after Monday Night Football. Make sure you guys set a reminder for that space. Exciting week 2. Make sure you guys go subscribe to our YouTube. We'll be back on X tomorrow when we drop our live stream. But besides that, we'll catch you guys next time.